We are reading from 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verse number 19 onwards. Happy to have you all back again on this wonderful Monday morning. Text number 19. Yasya sarve samarambha kama sankalpa varjitaha jnanagni takta karmanam tamahu panditam buraha. One is understood to be infinite knowledge whose every individual devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. So who is a perfect worker? One who is devoid of desire for sense gratification. That's the art of smart work. This is how work should be done according to Bhagavad Gita. Purport. Only a person in full knowledge can understand the activities of a person in Krishna consciousness. Because a person in Krishna consciousness is devoid of all kinds of sense gratification or sense gratificatory propensities, it is to be understood that he has burned up the reactions of his work by perfect knowledge of his constitutional position as eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality Godhead. He is actually learned who has attained to such perfection knowledge. Development of this knowledge of eternal servitorship of the Lord is compared to fire. Such a fire, once kindled, can burn up all kinds of reactions to work. Hare Krishna. So we are on the 4th chapter where there is a discussion going on transcendental knowledge. What is it has been discussed up to 4.10. How it destroys misconception was the subject matter for 4.11 up to 4.13. And then from 4.14 onwards, Lord Shri Krishna begins to talk to Arjuna about the importance of working with this transcendental knowledge. So what happens if you perform our work with this understanding? So what is mentioned here, if you work like this, then it is called as akarma, which means you act but you don't get reactions for it. Your action with knowledge will destroy all your reactions. That's the point here. So akarma is being defined here. Text number 20. So 19th, what we have discussed is what Krishna has said is a concept, which will be elaborated in verse number 20 to 24. Text number 20. Tyaktva karma phala sangam nitya tripto nirashraya karmani abhi pravartopi naiva kinchit karoti sa. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. Purport. This freedom from the bondage of actions is possible only in Krishna consciousness, when one is doing everything for Krishna. A Krishna conscious person acts out of pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he has no attraction for the results of the action. He is not even attached to his personal maintenance, for everything is left for Krishna. Nor is he anxious to secure things, nor to protect things already in his possession. He does his duty to the best of his ability and leaves everything to Krishna. Very important highlight. These 3-4 lines, beginning from he is not even attached to his personal maintenance. Such an unattached person is always free from the resultant reactions of good and bad. It is as though he were not doing anything. This is the sign of akarma, or actions without fruitive reactions. Any other action, therefore devoid of Krishna consciousness, is binding upon the worker, and that is the real aspect of vikarma, as explained here and before. So there are 3 dharmas which are being discussed in Bhagavad Gita. Dharma, adharma, and parodharma, which is translated in the form of karma, which means karma, which is dharma. Then there is adharma, which is vikarma, and there is parodharma, which is akarma. So Bhagavad Gita is actually talking about dharma in the context of karma. That is what it means. Excuse me. So here parodharma is being discussed. And what is paradharma, or what is akarma? Paro means superior. So what does it mean? To do it for Krishna. Do it for the supreme cause, for absolute truth, to perform our actions. And that is what brings success. If we perform pious activities or impious activities, both will bind us through the good and bad results. So Yudhishthira Maharaj's decision not to follow Krishna's advice to speak a lie was an attempt to practice dharma. But Krishna wanted to practice him parodharma. So this is called as morality versus transcendental morality. Yudhishthira wanted to follow the morality principles according to established principles within this world, but Krishna wanted him to follow transcendental morality, like that. Okay, text number 21. Nirashayata chitatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma kurvanapnoti kilvisham. So 21-22 talks about self-realized soul and his actions. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. So this is not a sadhaka stage, and this is an advanced stage of practice, which is being described here. This comes if we practice what is being described in text number 21st. Purport. A Krishna conscious person does not accept good or bad results in his activities. His mind, intelligence are fully controlled. What does it mean fully controlled? They are completely dedicated to serving Krishna. He knows that because he's a part and parcel of the Lord, the part played by him as part and parcel of the whole is not his own activity, but is only being done through him by the Supreme. When the hand moves, it does not move out of its own accord, but by the endeavor of the whole body. Perfect example. A Krishna conscious person is always dovetailed with the Supreme desire, for he has no desire for personal sense gratification. He moves exactly like a part of the machine. As a machine part requires oiling and cleaning for maintenance, so a Krishna conscious man maintains himself by his work just to remain fit for action and transcendental living service of the Lord. He is therefore immune to all the reactions of his endeavors. Can you get better analogy than this? In the time of machines, when we have become too much machine conscious, Prabhupada is also comparing us with the machine parts, and Krishna is the supreme machine. Like an animal, he has no proprietorship even over his own body. A cruel proprietor of an animal sometimes kills the animal in his possession, yet the animal does not protest, nor does it have any real independence. A Krishna conscious person, fully engaged in self-realization, has very little time to falsely possess any material object. For maintaining body and soul, he does not require for means of accumulating money. He does not therefore become contaminated by such material sins. He is free from all reactions to his actions. So this subject matter gets a little difficult and tricky because, is it what I'm supposed to practice or what is being discussed here? So Prabhupada's purpose goes a little bit mixed. Prabhupada makes the subject matter very clear, but what am I supposed to follow? So as I said, text number 20 is what we need to begin with. Abandoning all attachments to the results of one's actions. Finding satisfaction within our activities that we do, or let's say service that we do. And like that, we begin to perform akarma. And then from that, 21 and 22nd are the results which will happen. 22nd. Yadrachala vasantushto dvandavati tu vimassaraha sama siddha vasiddhaucha kritvapi na nibatyate. This is a concept which is repeated so many times in Bhagavad Gita. Sukhe dukhe samay kritva labha labho jaya jaya. That is what is being discussed once again here. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality, does not envy. Duality means too much attached to success, failure, happiness, distress. Too much result conscious, that's what leads to duality. And too much result conscious, what happens? Sometimes people are too much conscious of negativity. Maybe I will not be successful. And sometimes people are too proud. I'll definitely be successful. So that's the point here. Who is steady in both success and failure is never entangled, although performing actions. So all of you would have seen in a very high stake match, let's say World Cup final. I believe yesterday was a World Cup final for soccer. Let's say a cricket World Cup final. You might have seen, for example, let's say Sachin Tendulkar. He would perform brilliantly across different matches, different tournament. But when the time World Cup final, the expectations would be so high, the pressure would be so high. And plus, I remember whenever he had to play the last World Cup final, it was, I believe it was like, he has won a lot of tournament for India, but Sachin should also win World Cup for India. So he should retire after getting a World Cup title, winning a World Cup title for his country. Now imagine you go out on the field, put yourself into the situation. How many of you agree there would be unsurmountable pressure on your soldiers, on your shoulder? I'm sorry, on your shoulder, because the whole country is counting on you, banking on you, which means everyone has made their decision. You have to win the match. You cannot lose. Now, please tell me how many of you agree. If you have to go with that I want only that result, how many of you think there are a lot of chances that I may fail to perform at my best? How many of you would think like that? That's the point. Even we cannot perform our worldly duties properly if we are too much result conscious. Here what is said, he who is satisfied with gain which comes of his own accord, who is free from duality, does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled. And therefore, this high performing star players, at times they fail because there's a tremendous pressure. They have to win the match. If not, they know that back in their country, their effigy will be burnt, they will be cursed and whatnot. And nobody wants that. So interesting, huh? Puppet. A Krishna conscious person does not make much endeavor even to maintain his body. In other words, a Krishna conscious batsman would definitely win the World Cup. He will be far much more stable. I'm just joking. A Krishna conscious person does not make much endeavor even to maintain his body. He's satisfied with gains obtained by their own accord. And now what happens with the match? If one party wins, the other party loses, then people fight. There are riots. Something happened recently in Leicester or Leicester, whatever you call it, in the UK. Hindus, Muslims fought with each other because there was a India-Pakistan some cricket match. Something because of that. Recently happened in France also. Morocco and France, they fought with each other. The riots happened on the street. No. This is all too much bodily consciousness. Such a person neither begs nor borrows, but he always labors honestly as far as in his power, and is satisfied with whatever is obtained by his own honest labor. He is therefore independent in his livelihood. He does not allow anyone's service to hamper his own service in Krishna consciousness. However, for the service of the Lord, he can participate in any kind of action without being disturbed by the duality of the material world. The duality of the material world is felt in terms of heat and cold, of misery and happiness. So all this cricket player, soccer player, and all the audience who are too much eager to watch the football or cricket match, they go through severe dualities. When their team wins, they're super excited. When the team loses, they cry a lot. These are the dualities, right? And being talked about, all right, whatever is the result, we played a good match today. We had a good game. We had a good time together. That's the point being. A Krishna conscious person is about duality because it does not hesitate to act in any way for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, is steady both in success and failure. These signs are visible only when one is fully in transcendental knowledge. So this stability of consciousness cannot happen by any artificial discussion. It can only happen when one is actually situated in transcendental knowledge. And when you talk to people about the subject matter, they just find it too difficult to believe it is ever possible. They say, well, life is all about kabhi khushi, kabhi gum. Tararam pam pam, tararam pam pam. This is what they say. This is what the life is all about. Otherwise, how would you feel excited? You should feel the thrill when your team is winning, and you should cry when your team is losing. I say you're wasting time by doing the both because you're not getting anything out of it. Anyways, so these days it has become more difficult for people to comprehend that it is ever possible to become situated. And actually, people are not even looking for it. So many people have met, even the heads of the school and the colleges, who, when it comes to speaking to training to students, if I tell them, our Bhagavad Gita, our Krishna conscious philosophy can make them so stable that they would not be affected by the result. No, we're not interested. We want them to be passionate. We want them to be excited. We just can't believe it's possible. Text number 23. Gata sangasya muktasya jnana vasishta chetasaha yagna acharatah karma sangamagram pravilyate. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of matter nature, is fully situated in transcendental knowledge, merges entirely into transcendence. This is a karma, no reactions. Samagram pravilyate. Becoming fully Krishna conscious, when is freed from all duality, thus is free from contaminations of the material modes, he can become liberated because he knows his constitutional position in relationship with Krishna. Thus his mind cannot be drawn from Krishna consciousness. Consequently, whatever he does for Krishna is primal Vishnu. Therefore, all his works are technically sacrifices because sacrifice aims at satisfying the Supreme Person. Vishnu, Krishna. The resultant reactions to all such works certainly merge into transcendence, and one does not suffer material effects. Text number 24. Brahmarpanam Brahmahave Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmaeva Tena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. So, a person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, and such in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. The text number 23 and 24 is actually a result talking about if one works like performs parodharma or akarma for that reason, then what happens? He attains back to Godhead. That is what we discussed. A spiritual position, purport. How activism in Krishna consciousness can lead one to the ultimately to the spiritual goal is described here. There are various activities in Krishna consciousness, all of them will be described in the following verses, but for the present, just the principle of Krishna consciousness is described. A conditioned soul entangled in metal contamination is sure to act in the metal atmosphere, yet he has to get out of such an environment. The process by which the conditioned soul can get out of the material atmosphere is Krishna consciousness. For example, a patient who is suffering from a disorder of the bowels due to overindulgence in milk products is cured by another milk product, namely curds. The materially absorbed conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness as set forth here in the Gita. This process is generally known as yajna. Our activities, sacrifices, simply meant for the satisfaction of Krishna. The more the activities of the material world performed in Krishna consciousness or for Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. The word Brahma or Brahman means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called as Brahma Jyoti, his spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in that Brahma Jyoti, but when the Jyoti is covered by illusion or sense gratification, it's called material. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent by such an offering or contribution, the process of consummation, the contributor, and the results are all combined together, Brahman or the absolute truth, which means how you perform a yajna. There is a yajna kund, there is an agni, then there is a ahuti, swaha, there is a Pandit Brahman who speaks. All that is being described over here. So here, that yajna, just like we had a yajna on Saturday, right? We performed Nasimha yajna. Just like all of you are part of the yajna. So there was an ahuti, there was a chanting of mantra, there was a pujari, there was a brahmana, and there was a fire, there was a yajna kund, etc., etc. It's all has been done for the pleasure of the Lord. Same can be done by our day-to-day activities. That is point. That's the point being discussed here. Now, maybe it's not so much clicking to all of us here, probably because we are not practicing or performing yajna every day. But here Krishna is saying, same yajna through what can be performed when you perform every action for the pleasure of Vishnu. For example, let's say we eat food, right? Now that food, what we eat is not food, is prasadam. Why? Because that has been offered to the Lord. What is that? In the yajna, whatever we offer, then we accept that becomes prasadam. So offering it to Krishna becomes an yajna sacrifice. Like that everything we do, as much as we try to perform our activities for the pleasure of Krishna, to that much extent we are practicing yajna in our life. And to that much degree, we are becoming spiritualized. That's the whole point. Yajna, the whole idea of yajna is to purify. Purification of one's existence, purification of ether environment. Therefore, when people from outside, they come to Krishna conscious atmosphere, temples, where there have been a chanting of the holy names, when there is a worship of the deities, they immediately experience there is a difference in ether. How many of you understand this? And that difference in ether is happening because the activities are being done for the pleasure of the Lord. Similarly, in advanced devotees, when they enter particular community, they can very clearly sense the subtle nature of the ether by knowing that if anything is not being done properly, they will just walk in and they'll understand, oh, deities are not being worshipped properly because the ether is not pure. Either the devotees are not practicing four regular principles. They can very easily understand. Just like a common man can have an idea, understanding as soon as he enters the campus, ISKCON campus, that there is some difference here between the boundary wall. On this side and that side, there is a tangible difference. Similarly, advanced devotee, when he enters, he can understand very easily just by sensing the ether. If the practicing devotees here are actually doing activities for the pleasure of the Lord or not. That's how the impact is by this yajna which is being discussed here. Matter dovetailed for the cause as to truth regains the spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness, the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme. When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is said to be in samadhi or trance. Anything done in such transcendental consciousness is called yajna, or sacrifice for the absolute. In that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, contribution, consumption, the performer, leader of the performance, the result or ultimate gain, everything becomes one in the absolute, the Supreme Brahman. This is the method of Krishna consciousness. That's why we offer bhoga. That's why we do chanting of the holiness of the Lord, to make our whole day as an act of sacrifice. Yajna, offering it for the pleasure of Krishna. Text number 25. What are the differences between karmis, yogis, and devotees? Daivam ivapare yajnam yogina paripasate brahmagna pare yajnam yagne vepopajovati. Uranga. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices, and some of them offer sacrifice in the fire of Supreme Brahman. Puppet. As described above, a person engaged in discharging duties in Krishna consciousness is also called a perfect yogi or a first-class mystic. Are, why? How are we a yogi? We are not performing any yajna. Yogis are supposed to perform. Why? Because our every movement is an ahuti in the Krishna consciousness as an offering to the Lord. But there are others also who perform similar sacrifice in the worship of devatas, and still others who sacrifice to the Supreme Brahman or the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord. So, there are different kinds of sacrifices in terms of different categories. Such different categories of sacrifice by different types of performance only superficially demark varieties of sacrifices. Factually, sacrifice means to satisfy Supreme Lord Vishnu, because his another name is Yajna Purusha. All the different varieties of sacrifice can be placed within two primary divisions. First, sacrifice of worldly possessions, and second, sacrifice in pursuit of transcendental knowledge. Sacrifice of worldly possessions, which means when you do this big yajnas, there's a lot of charity has to be done. Rajasi yajna, Ashwamedh yajna, etc. Even yajnas at our level that we perform today's time. For example, we had just yajna on Saturday. It's a pretty expensive endeavor. The ahutis and all that involves a lot of money. And Prabhu said there is another kind of yajna, which is sacrifice in pursuit of transcendental knowledge. In pursuit of transcendental knowledge, which means, for example, if you have ever attended yajna, I'm pretty sure all of you have attended yajna in your childhood while growing up, no difference would have made it to your consciousness. Or more or less, you would have felt, अरे कितना pollution create करा, और कितना धुआं create हुआ. There would have been nothing that you would have, in your consciousness, any transformation would happen. Now, Prabhupada is saying there is another sacrifice in pursuit of transcendental knowledge, which means to really get this realization, Krishna is the Supreme Lord, I am his eternal servant. Everything in this creation is nothing but you meant to be used in the service of the Lord. This transcendental knowledge we aspire for can be attained through sacrifice. Can be attained through sacrifice. That is our sacrifice in pursuit of transcendental knowledge. So upcoming verses are going to talk about different sacrifices now. Why is being discussed? Because through this sacrifices you can acquire transcendental knowledge. Now, so what sacrifice has been done for us, or what sacrifice has been prescribed for us for that reason? Just like chanting Hare Krishna. Sacrifice of time, sacrifice of sensory activities in remembering the Lord, then offering bhoga, then serving Vaishnava. If you see in that manner, our whole day has become Krishna conscious. Now, we are not at that level of purity, we can chant attentively. Fine, but now we have dedicated the rest of our day in the service of the Lord through different means. Now somebody may say, I'm not actually doing much service. Maybe once in a week I come and attend one program, and maybe I just stand for 1 hour to do prasadam serving. What about my rest of the week? For all these people, they need to get into their head, which they don't get it because of their attachment. You have to start contributing financially. Because as a grahastha, this is what you're supposed to do. Now you go out for the office, you make a money. Unless you sacrifice that, how would yajna happen? You keep stocking up your bank balance thinking that, okay, I'll do this, I need to do that. Point is, the nature of mind is, he would never allow you to spend any penny apart from your sense gratification. If I have a 1 BHK, no, I think I shouldn't have 2 BHK. If I have 2 BHK, no, I need a 3 BHK. If I'm driving a Honda City, I need a Mercedes Benz. The mind keeps on saying like that. You have to be very careful for it. So that way, everyone can practice a sacrifice. And Prabhupada have said that. How to do sacrifice. Prabhupada have given a system for it. And that's how we make everything, whatever we do, turn into Krishna conscious activity. Sacrifice. So those who are in Krishna conscious sacrifice all material possessions for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. This body is also a material possession. They sacrifice that also for the service of the Lord. While others who want some temporary material happiness sacrifice their material possessions to satisfy demigods such as Indra, Sun God, etc. And others who are impersonal sacrifice their identity by merging into the existence of impersonal Brahman. The demigods are powerful living entities appointed by the Supreme Lord for the maintenance and supervision of all material functions like the heating, watering, lighting of the universe. Those who are interested in material benefits worship the demigods by various sacrifices according to Vedic rituals. They are called Bahu Ishwaravadi, or believers in many gods. But others who worship the impersonal feature of the absolute truth and regards the forms of the demigods as temporary, sacrifice their individual selves in the supreme fire and thus end their individual existence by merging into the existence of the Supreme. Such impersonalists sacrifice their time and philosophical speculation to understand the transcendental nature of the Supreme. In other words, the fruitive workers sacrifice their material possessions for material enjoyment, whereas the impersonalists sacrifice the material designation with the view to merge into the existence Supreme. For the impersonalists, the fire altar of sacrifice is the Supreme Brahman. The offering is the self being consumed by the fire of Brahman, which they want to destroy their identity. That's the meaning. The Krishna conscious person like Arjuna, however, sacrifices everything for the satisfaction of Krishna, and thus all his material possessions as well as his own self, everything is sacrificed for Krishna. Thus he is a first class yogi, but he does not lose his individual existence. Please don't take sacrifice as some loss. This is not the loss meant. Sacrifice means, in a sense, anything in this world is designed in a way of give and take relationship. Unless you give, you cannot get it. For example, unless you release carbon dioxide, you cannot inhale oxygen. You getting it? This is a very fundamental truth we have to understand. Everything in this creation has been designed in a way of give and take relationship. So what sacrifice here means is you have to give back something. Then only you can get. That is what is called a sacrifice. When you voluntarily and with knowledge sacrifice, or let's say when you give your things to other for the pleasure of other, which for example, let's say we have yajnas for the pleasure of devatas, so that they can bless us. So we give our time, we give our attention to it, we use our wealth to organize that yajna. There's a lot of charity to be given, a lot of effort has to be done. This is sacrifice of material possessions by which we acquire some benediction boons from the devata. That is what is being discussed. So sacrifice is you can say, is a cardinal truth of one's existence. We are designed in such a way that without sacrifice, we cannot gain anything. If all of you are an IT engineer or professional today, haven't you sacrificed your 18 years of life in acquiring a knowledge which you are able to earn today? So what you are making today, the result that you have today is because of the sacrifice that you have done in the past. And the result that you have today is also not because you only sacrifice in the past, you continue to sacrifice every day. If you don't go to office, would you get a salary? So sacrifice is a constant, consistent part of life. It can never be taken away. If it is taken away, then the whole social equilibrium, this universal balance will get destroyed. Everything, if you want to think about this, everything, if it is functioning in harmony, it's happening just because there is a constant give and take. Give and take. You consume food, you give out food for the pigs. Isn't it? The stool becomes a food for the pigs like this. There's a taking in and there is giving out. So we have to think in this manner. Now you have been acting in a way which is designed by a current scenario where you have to act it. But now you have to put it into your thought how we can perform actions so that my action becomes actually sacrifice in service of the Lord. Well, you don't have to think too much about it because Srila Prabhupada have already defined what we all have to do. So now here, the discussion that we can probably take it as a homework for all of you, because if I get into reading of it, it will become a big discussion because it's all about yajnas for different ashramas. So from 26, let's take a look. I'll just give a little summary of it. Let's take a look. Text number 26. These are the different sacrifices from 26 up to verse number 34, which are being discussed. As I said before, why sacrifices are being discussed in the 4th chapter here? Because through sacrifice you get transcendental knowledge. Now, you went to school, you sacrificed your playtime, and you got your knowledge, you got your degree. Similarly, Krishna is saying, unless you sacrifice, you will not get transcendental knowledge. But the sacrifice here is not what we know of. There is a different sacrifice. What is that? Let's take a look at it. I hope the sacrifice is making sense. You're not getting worried about it. Please don't think sacrifice only means fire sacrifice. No, no, no. Our whole life is a sacrifice, meant to be sacrificed if we don't, if we want to live life happily in this world. Otherwise, we'll not. For example, think about sun rises every day. What is the taxation for that? There are some Brahmanas who are still offering prayers to the sun god, because of which you're having sunrise. Otherwise, it will not happen. There is somebody who's paying the tax. Otherwise, the order will not be there. The wind is blowing, you have water to drink, you have food to eat. Somebody is performing some sacrifice because of which you have this. And because we are just taking things and we are not identifying or we are not giving back anything to these devatas, therefore the people outside, even despite having money, they are suffering like anything. There cannot be any peace. They are called thieves. We have already discussed in the 3rd chapter. Let's take a look what Krishna says here. Text number 26. Shrotrādīn indriyāni anye samyam yajñāni shujuhati shabdādin vishayānanya indriyāgni shujuhati. So first about brahmacharis, they sacrifice the hearing, process, and senses in the fire of mental control. And others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the object of the senses in the fire of the senses. So Prabhupada writes in the middle, the brahmacharis or students under the care of a bona fide spiritual master control the mind by abstaining from sense gratification. For example, there is no sex life allowed for brahmacharis. A brahmachari hears only words concerning Krishna consciousness. Hearing is the basic principle of understanding, and therefore the pure brahmachari engages fully in Harer Nama Anukirtanam, chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. He restrains himself from the vibrations of material sound, and his hearing is engaged in transcendental sound vibration of Hare Krishna. Similarly, the householders who have some license for sense gratification perform such acts with great restraint. Sex life, intoxication, meat eating are general tendencies of human society, but a regulated householder does not indulge in unrestricted sex life and other sense gratification. Marriage on the principle of religious life is therefore current in all civilized human society because that is a way for restricted sex life. This restricted unattached sex life is also a kind of yajna, because the restricted householder sacrifices general tendency to a sense gratification for higher transcendental life. All of us want Krishna Prema, therefore we are attending morning program. At least there is some background. So we want something, for that we have to perform sacrifice. That's being discussed here. But what sacrifice we have to do? That we need to understand from text like Bhagavad Gita. Text number 27. Sarvanindriya karmani pranakarmani chapare atma samyama yognyagno jyoti jnana dipati. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through control of the mind and senses offer the function of all the senses on of his life breath as oblations into the fire of controlled mind. This is about Ashtanga Yogi, how they control their mind and senses, strictly following rules and regulations. Text number 28. There are 4 kinds of sacrifices. Dravya yajna, tapo yajna, yoga yajna, tata pare, swadhyaya jnana yajnascha, yatyaha samshita vrataha. Having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing their possessions, dravya yajna, and others by performing severe austerities, tapo yajna, and by practicing the yoga of eightfold mysticism, yoga yajna, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge, that is called as swadhyaya yajna. Well, this is an important purport, so I guess we'll pause here. We'll take it tomorrow because it's 7:15. We'll read out. If, however, you get a time, you can just read through some of these purports. Our main discussion begin with 4.34. Of course, this is also very important, so I'll not rush through from here. So tomorrow, when we meet again, we'll start our discussion from 28th verse to conclude once again our today's discussion. How do we acquire transcendental knowledge? Just to acquire a mundane knowledge, we had to go and spend 18 years of our life in school and colleges just to get this realization. All that was wasted. Because once you get a job, you're trained again. So, anyways, here now Krishna is speaking about transcendental knowledge. Arjuna, you have to perform sacrifice because this is the principle of this creation. Without sacrifice, you cannot gain anything. So now question comes, what sacrifice? Do I need to give 2 hours every day to read Bhagavad Gita? Well, yes, but not also. There are many PhD scholars who know all the 700 verses, but they don't understand anything about transcendental knowledge. So spiritual subject matter works a little differently than our material endeavors for success. So that is what is being discussed here. So what is that one sacrifice which all of us would want to actually know when so much different kind of sacrifice are being discussed? My dear Krishna, tell me one sacrifice that I should do which holds true at all time, place and circumstances. Because Krishna says if you're brahmachari, then you follow control of mind and senses in one way. If you're a grasta, then you follow control of mind and senses in a different way. You're allowed certain thing, you're not allowed certain thing. So Arjuna thinks, my dear Lord, tell me one sacrifice that I should follow, that I can follow in all my ashrams, across all my varnas. And the answer for that will be given in the 34th verse. And that is how the discussion goes on. We'll see that tomorrow. Until then, thank you very much for joining us once again on this wonderful Monday morning. Jagaduru Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki. And today is Ekadashi. Happy Ekadashi to all of you. Hari Om. Thank you. Thank you.